Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about certifications and Scrum certifications. So let's get into it. So the question in question today was, Frederick, should I invest my money and my time into getting a Scrum certification basically? So yeah. No. Dear God, no. No, I'm gonna raise my finger, I'm gonna say this. No, fuck no, unless you are really certain that you want to go in a management direction and that you have the experience to make that certification valuable. Now, what do I mean by that? You see, let's back up and say this. Guys, Scrum, working in a Scrum fashion or a Kanban fashion or something like that, we're talking about an education that should take you, we're getting these concepts and getting them to work in a workflow is literally a few hours of work. That's how much time it would take me to teach you the principles. I'm not saying the entire philosophy, the history and the theory behind all of this. I'm saying that the parts that most companies apply to their work process that actually is used, that will take me just a few hours to teach you. And that in of itself is sort of taking a it's like a small part of the thing that a true manager would do in order to create an efficient team, or a tech lead or some person like that, right? So if you pay money to go and get a Scrum certification, it might just be something to put on your CV. And if that's something you want, go for it. For sure you should do it. I mean, there is interesting things to learn from this, but it's a very similar type of thing to do as to getting a certification for a specific language, such as say in Java, the Java certification. Now these things may be valuable to certain companies, especially in the industry of consultancies and like stuff like that, because anything that you can add to your CV increases your price. But at the end of the day, the certification is just a piece of paper that says that you know something. You can acquire these skills outside of the certification, and honest to God, most developers don't have these sorts of certifications. There are certain tools for specific industries or specific organizations where they really want you to have a certification, but for the most part, this is not a hard requirement. And for the Scrum certification, or learning how to work in a Scrum fashion, I mean, I do it, I've done it for so many years, and I have managers who have been doing it for so many years. They've never had a certification for this sort of stuff, because it literally is as simple as going onto the internet and reading up a little bit about it. Now the thing that I'm saying here though, is not that just because you know Scrum, or that you have a Scrum certification or something like that, that equals that you are now a good manager or a good tech lead. No. That's very different. It's a similar thought to saying that, oh, because you know CPR, you are now a doctor or a paramedic or someone like that. The requirements for you to be a good manager or tech lead is much higher than the fact that you know a way of structuring your work process. And a really good manager or a good tech lead of some sort is the sort of person who not only who knows how to set up work practices, but we're talking about like a much more in-depth knowledge of managing people and stakeholders and putting up work processes and stuff like that. Administrative work, ideally they should have some understanding of business development, so that they understand what needs to be prioritized, and they understand what value systems that they need to have, and how to fit all that together with the engineering aspect of things. And then lastly, a fairly good understanding of human psychology. They need to understand group dynamics. They need to understand all these silly little games that needs to be played, where some people feel it's, we're going to sit in a circle, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And And some people think this is silly, and for some people this is actually very valuable. They need to be the sort of person who understands both sides of this spectrum, because at the end of the day it's just a trick to get people to connect. So these are the sorts of things that needs to happen if, you should have as considerations before you spend a lot of money on going and doing something that is like, it's just wow. Just wow. It's similar to, I actually looked that up. If I wanted to take a one course, official course, through the Swedish education system for HTML, not CSS, not JavaScript, nothing else, just HTML. The price tag was 9,000 euros for a course and that's just HTML. I think the course was roughly 8 months. It is beyond me how something how to just learn HTML would take me 8 months and be worth 9,000 euros. So this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, even if I were to pay this, and the poor people who pay this amount of money, sure, I'm sure that some of them felt that they got their money's worth, and this is exactly the same thing. I'm sure, because I have actually been to school with people who have a Scrum certification, and nothing that they taught us through their education, indicated that they had a skill that was beyond anything else that you learned in a few hours. In fact, it was kind of funny because the person that I know who was a certified Scrum Master couldn't find a job at all until he actually got a education as a programmer. Then things started to moving for him. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're wondering if you should get a Scrum certification just because you want to get a job or something like that, just keep on, focus on your coding, dude. It is not that valuable to have this sort of certification. It is a supplement to already existing management skills or seniority skills. You can be a programmer and want to be a tech lead and learn some basic Scrum practices if that's something that your company wants to apply, right? In fact, most companies will give you some coaching or give you a small workshop or something like that as a developer if you have these sorts of inclinations, and it's time to have someone who takes charge of this sort of process. It's not something that anybody cares, all that much at least, about when you're applying for a job, especially not as a junior. Have a great day.